Welcome. Scott here. I will be covering on the upcoming event, which is our second Shinryu level 6 warrior quest, area 2 in global. Firstly, let me give you a quick overview on the 6 warriors quest. You can bring a party of 6 members for the quest. Each member can be equipped with their own call. For every turn, you can do a member swap. To swap a member, you need to click on the swap button. You can only bring one summon and allow use one burst. No friend support will be allowed. Abilities that revive the party will affect both parties. The boss HP bar will have thresholds indicators. If you see the target icon is flashing with a red border, it means that the boss is going to do a HP attack. For those who have a full built-up roster, this is an event that you will enjoy a lot, and the fun bringing a bigger party and have everyone utilize their strengths. Put a team of various utilities, and this will help you in this even and future 6 warrior fights as well. Unlike Dimensions and Transcendence or Entropy, there will be no character lock. So you don't need to worry about locking out the character for future 6 warrior quests. Let's proceed with the boss guide proper. The featured units that are synergy for the event are Yuri from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Gladiolus from Final Fantasy 15, Arciela and Eald'narche from Final Fantasy XI, Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII, and lastly Rydia from Final Fantasy IV. The event will mark the debut of Yuri's FR and BT. Yuri, Gladiolus, Eald'narche, and Yuffie will be getting their C90 awakenings and rework. Yuri and Eald'narche's BT will be realizable. All featured characters will be getting their force enhancements unlocked. For the event, we will be fighting 2 bosses, Dimensional Zombie Whale and the Dimensional Dullahan, which has 90 million HP each. They are both immune to paralyzed debuff and launches. The turn requirement is 95 and the HP requirements is 35,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. As we are no longer have Lufania Plus fights, the boss guide will be focused primarily on Shinryu fights. In Shinryu, you need to understand the effects gained by the boss as the force gauge build up, its force ability and its force time effect. If your party force levels aren't at max levels, it is highly certain that the boss force gauge will build up faster than yours. To have a better understanding on the basics of the force gauge mechanics and Shinryu fights, I have done a video explaining the mechanics. I have included the link to the video under the comments and video description for your quick reference. For this fight, the boss force gauge is broken into 2 thresholds. When the boss gauge is more or equal to 20%, your party attack, defense, and speed will be reduced by 30%. When the boss gauge is more or equal to 40%, your party attack, defense, and speed will be reduced by 50%. The boss force gauge will build up faster as its HP is lowered. You can refer to the table on the screen for the percentages. At the 100% threshold, the Dullahan will use its force ability, Northern Cross, and activates its force time for 2 turns. The boss force ability, Northern Cross, is a AoE Brave plus HP attack and inflicts ice resist down for 2 turns. The ability will also apply the Icebind field effect. Your characters will turn into ice and they won't be able to act until Dullahan takes its next turn. Upon using the force ability, the boss will enter into its force time, where the gauge will start to emit a red hue with counter of 2 on its gauge. When the force time is activated, the boss party will gain Ice Enchant. To freeze the enemy's force time, you need to use a Holy Magic ability, which is only Yuri's FR ability at the moment. If you don't have Yuri's FR, you can use other non-elemental FR ability like Terra, Cloud of Darkness, or Iroha. Sabin FR can also work as well if you enchant him with Holy. For Holy Enchant, you can use Ash LDCA or use a party Holy Enchanter like Kuja, Paladin Cecil, Aiko, or Ash herself. If you trigger the force time where the Dullahan is already dead, there will be no force ability triggered, and the Zombie Whale will enter into the force time on its own. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Titus, Jack, and Vanille. To speed up the fight, using HP damage up debuff calls like Karasame, Seymour, Fran, Ignis, Lily-Set, Maria, and Dark Knight Cecil are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, Aura type HP damage up calls like Kumari, Alisai, Priyash, Leo and Locke are also viable. Most recently C90 units have Aura type HP damage up bonuses. You can use Dissidia DB Call Finder to find out more. The fights feature a lot of HP penalties like HP poison or healing convert to HP damage like mechanics. Although the HP requirements is 35,000, you could still fail the HP requirements if you are not careful. So heal up the party before you finish the fight to fulfill the requirements. Burst healing calls like Freya, Mog, Rude, Paladin Cecil, Purim or Rem are useful here. Damage mitigation calls with debuff negation like Rajin and Reno LDCA are ultra useful here to handle the absolute zero threshold triggers. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. For any endgame fights like Lufania and Shinryu, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. You can consider bringing Yuri, Lena, Ishtala, Yuna, Garnet, Purim, Rem, and Ramza. Lena and Yuna are great for this fight for their debuff evasion and cleansing utility as well. Lena can also ensure your party is always safe with her powerful HP regen buffs. Bring a support that have strong HP regen and burst healing is important for this fight. Non-HP regen supports are also important as there will be a phase where all your healing will be converted to HP damage. The fight features a lot of HP attacks from the bosses. Tanks and damage mitigators are great options to minimize the damage taken by your party. You can consider bringing one of the following options: Leela, Beatrix, Snow, Zack, Edge, Warrior of Light, Orin, or Golov. Counter damage mitigators like Beatrix, Orin, Gladiolus, and Golov are great options for this fight. Evasion tank like Leela and Edge will have nice field day against the Dullahan. While it is not in counter mode, the Dullahan will nullify your brave gains and apply a 20% max HP poison field. Denying turns with turn delay and turn deletions are useful here. You can still retain brave with special effect mechanics like Iroha's reduced brave consumption or Arciela's max brave floor. In addition to Lena, other debuff evasion units like Ignis and Afmat are also useful here. They offer burst healing and great turn manipulation. Selpha could work here, but her damage output will be hindered as the boss are immune to launches. Do note that debuff evasion won't work against Ruin, which is triggered when the Dullahan uses its Ruin Holy or counter Ruin Holy, as these attacks will bypass debuff evasion. If you want to skip all Dullahan triggers from 79% to 19%, you will want to rush it down to death in a FR charged burst phase. Follow-up attack units like Kain, Freya, Noctis, Cisnei, Yang, Cloud of Darkness and Laguna will be useful here to boost your damage to ensure you will finish the boss before it gets its turn. In addition to the meta FR like Titus FR, optimal FR to use for this fight are Yuri, Ursula, Cloud of Darkness and Luna Freya. Yuri is a very underrated powerful support when fully geared. Lots of people might not build him up due to the upcoming banners which features fan favorites like Tifa and Rinoa. A fully geared Yuri can easily enable a 3-party member clear for this event. The bosses are immune to launches and paralyze. Thus, you cannot abuse it with Camlanaut FR. However, Camlanaut is still useful at limited capacity with his BT aura debuff. His brother Eald'narche is more useful here, and the latter can shut down the boss mechanics totally except for the absolute zero threshold triggers. Iroha FR is also limited due to the constant HP poison aura and the healing conversion to HP damage auras from the Zombie Whale. Charlotta and Luna Freya are powerful supports, and their FR phase can finish off the fight fast when you set up your party to their strengths. Lunafreya will make setting up your party for an optimal FR phase easily. Arciela can provide powerful auras for your party. Cloud of Darkness FR can help to nuke the boss easily when you accompanied her with powerful aura supports. As Shinryu is about building up your force gauge chargers units are great to deploy here. Characteristics of force charger are the unit have substantial amount of instant turn non-attacking abilities. At max force enhancement level 30, one such instant turn ability can supercharge the force gauge by a whopping 50%. You can easily amplify your force time damage by abusing the supercharging mechanics. Examples of such force gauge chargers units are Pernello, Kryl, Arciela, Braska, Ignis and Lunafreya. For other recommendations, you can consider the following. For tanks, you can bring Warrior of Light and Orin. With his C90 and rework, Gladiolus becomes the best defensive cover tank. With his blink buff active, he is immune to debuffs and brave damage received will be 0. However, his damage could be limited due to the constant null brave gains effect auras, but bringing him will ensure a very safe clear. The other featured BT unit, Eald'narche, is also useful with his shutdown mechanics as long as the enemies are targeting him. Do note that the Dullahan Absolute Zero triggers at the 79% and 39% will bypass his terror turn denial mechanics. You can bring the standard damage nuker units like Machina, Titus, or Terra and nuke the boss with a FR powered burst phase before they could activate their force time. Sabin is great for his AoE delays and ignore defense damage. However, you will need to bring 2 party enchant calls, Holy and Wind enchant, to maximize his FR damage output. His delay is great for pushing the boss turns off. Generally, units that offer turn delay and deletion are great for this fight. You need to do Holy Elemental Magic FR ability to freeze the boss force time. You can bring party Holy Enchanter like Kuja or Ash. Rydia is very good here with her 100% evasion mechanic since none of the boss attacks are guaranteed hits. Reno is very good for counter and hit-based setups. His pyramid debuff can prevent the debuffs triggered from Absolute Zero. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Similar to any Lufania fights, for Shinryu fights, the boss will also gain stats boosts and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete the boss's HP to a certain threshold. However, Shinryu bosses will also gain HP damage reduction auras as well. The threshold's trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight and the 79% HP threshold. At the start of the fight, it will boost its defense stats by 50%. It will raise its brave damage and brave gain reduction auras to 70%. It will raise the boss brave damage cap by 50%. At 79% HP threshold, it will further boost its defense stats to 100% and the brave damage cap to 100%. The fight will still feature 70% brave damage and brave gain reduction auras. To handle the defense stats boost, you can inflict defense down calls. To handle the brave gain reductions, you can bring a brave gain up support like Agrias, Ram, or Quistis. With the recent units released, you shouldn't have any problem in handling the brave gain or damage reduction auras. For HP damage reduction auras, HP damage up calls will only partly offset against the reductions. However, you can easily overwrite them with your party force time. As we progress through the era, we will gain access to units with FR that allows you to build up your force time HP damage bonuses up to 999%. Learning on how to take full advantage of the damage window in Shinryu fight holds the key on how to make Shinryu fights easier. Generally, the fight features 3 key thresholds phases that you need to take note of. Let's cover the Dullahan's aura triggers. Absolute Zero to counter phase. Dullahan's Absolute Zero is a AoE debuff trigger at the 79% and 39% HP threshold. The trigger will inflict a 1-turn framed paralysis debuff and 3-turn ruin debuff. Ruin will result the affected target's turn to be delayed by 1 turn after they act. This trigger will bypass turn denial debuffs like Confusion or Eald'narche's Terror. If you trigger the threshold in burst or summon phase, the attack will only be triggered once you exited from those phases. After using it, the Dullahan will enter into counter mode where it will counter any attacks with counter Ruin Holy. The effect will last between 79% to 60% HP thresholds and 39% to 20% HP thresholds. I will discuss more on this in the subsequent slides. No Brave Recovery phase. When the Dullahan is not in counter mode, it will be applying an aura which prevents your party to have Brave Recovery and 20% max HP poison aura whenever the character acts. The HP threshold triggers for this is between 100% to 80%, 59% to 40% and lastly 19% to 0%. All Brave gain related abilities will be nullified except special Brave mechanics like Iroha's Brave Consumption Reduction mechanic, Arciela's Max Brave Floor and Vaughn's Max Brave Floor from his BT aura. You can still gain Brave from Brave hits. Avoid getting broken is important when the Dullahan is in this phase. It is your best interest to deny their turns with turn disable debuffs like Confusion or Eald'narche's Terror. You can push off the boss turns with delay and turn deletion. Zombie Whale, healing result in HP damage phase. The Zombie Whale has also a HP threshold trigger mechanics. The HP threshold triggers are the 79% to 60% and 39% to 20%. Upon triggering any ability that recover HP will deal HP damage instead. This is similar to the Fallen Parrot's mechanic at the Dimension End Transcendence Tier 2 fight. While this aura is active, you can swap units that offer HP regen or you can just delay the boss turns with turn delay or turn deletion utility. Do watch out for HP triggers attacks from the Dullahan though when Zombie Whale activate this aura. Now let's cover more in depth on the counter phase of Dullahan. Upon breaching the threshold at the 79% and 39% HP threshold, the Dullahan will freeze the screen and followed by an AoE debuff infliction of 1 turn paralysis and 3 turn ruin debuff. The ruin debuff will result the inflicted unit to have its next turn delayed by 1 turn after they act. As mentioned earlier, the absolute zero will bypass turn disable debuff's effect. Most JP players uses a debuff negation call like Reno's Pyramid or Ragin LD debuff. You can also block your character's buff slots with 6 framed buffs. You can also evade the attack with party-wide evasion effects with Edge or Rydia. You can also make the boss miss with Kimuri's Total Blindness debuff. After using it, the Dullahan will enter into counter mode. The counter phase will get triggered between the following HP thresholds, 79% to 60% and 39% to 20%. When the Dullahan is being attacked, it will trigger counter Ruin Holy which will result the boss resetting its break status followed by an AoE Brave plus HP attack. Upon hitting its targets, it will reduce the target buff duration by 1 turn and inflict 3 turn Ruin debuff that bypass debuff evasion. Here are some general notes about the counter mechanic. 1. Dullahan won't counter when you attack the Zombie Whale only. 2. Dullahan won't counter when you attack it with a call ability. 3. Dullahan won't counter while you are in burst or summon phase. However, it will trigger once you exit from the burst phase. There are 3 ways to handle the mechanics. 1. Damage mitigation. Debuffs that prevent brave gains like Setzer or Cater can be used here. You can also use Reno and Ragin LDCA to handle this. Damage mitigation buff like Warrior of Light and 9 Shields will also work to mitigate the damage. However, as you will be getting hit by the attack, your buff duration will get reduced by 1 turn whenever you get hit by the counter. 2. Party evasion. This is probably the best method. Units that offer party-wide evasion like Edge, Rydia, and Leela will have a nice field in this fight. 3. Deny the boss with turn disable debuff. The Dullahan is immune to paralysis so you can only deny them with either Eald'narche's Terror debuff, Arciela, or Kefka's HP Silence debuff which only works if the boss next action is a HP attack. You can also disable their turn with Confusion debuff from Agria's Faded Moly, Waka Confusion Rates or Confusion from Purim and Mog. Special turn denial debuffs like Camlanaut also works here. However, it is worth noting that Camlanaut will be hampered as the bosses are immune to launches, so you can't abuse his powerful FR. Fang LD debuff will also work for show instances, but it will wear off as you land hits on the boss. Now let's focus a bit on the general rotation cycle of the boss attacks. Knowing their rotations will help to plan your next strategy to handle the boss mechanics. For the Dullahan, it will start off with Morning Star, a single melee brave attack followed by a brave gain of 100% of its initial brave. On its next turn, it will use Ruin Holy, an AoE brave attack that inflicts 3-turn Ruin debuff. The Ruin debuff will bypass debuff evasion. The affected unit will get its next turn delayed by 1 turn after they act. The last move of the rotation is Enmity, which is single target brave attack that inflicts 3 non-frame debuffs, max brave down and initial brave down by 50%, and a brave poison debuff that scales of the affected unit's initial brave. After using this, the Dullahan will use Morning Star and repeat the cycle. For the Zombie Whale, it will start off Zombie Powder, a single target magic brave attack that it gains 150% initial brave after the attack. On its next turn, it will use Zombie Powder, where will inflict a framed poison debuff that scales 100% of the unit's max brave. The last move of rotation is the Ultrasonics attack, where it will do a brave gain of 100% of its initial brave followed by a single target brave plus HP. This attack can be deadly if it breaks the target. As long as you have tools, you shouldn't have any problem in the handling the boss mechanics. I have come to the last slide of the guide. By now, you should have a FR. Generally, you just charge up your force gauge. Have the FR unit activate their force time with their force ability. Prepare for a big damage phase either through a unit burst phase or supercharge the gauge with Kane's follow-up. To build up the bonuses efficiently, you need bring a force gauge charger. Examples are Pernello, Kryle, Ignis, Charlotta, Braska and Lunafreya. At force level 30, this units can boost the force charge with 50% with their instant turn, non-attacking ability on top of the force time conditions. If you bring Kane or using Kane BT friend as support, have him activate his BT aura and let him stay in the air firing the lancets while your force gauge charger is spamming his or her instant turns. As the boss are immune to launch, you won't be able to abuse the Camlanaut powerful FR mechanics. However, Camlanaut still works well for his disable debuffs to prevent the boss acting consecutively. From this fight onwards, we will be introduced to the Queen of FR setup, Lunafreya. Lunafreya's strength is her powerful turn manipulation utility from her LD buff, and she can be used as a call slave if you don't intend to get her fully built. Personally, I recommend you to get her fully built because she will open up a vast variety of team comps. When her overhead buff Trident of Calling is at 4, her Brave and Attack commands will be replaced with her Quick Prayer and Heavy Prayer option. Quick Prayer buff grants the ally free and instant turns while the buff is active, which is great for setting up a big damage phase, whether it's FR into BT plus into BT phase or BT plus into FR or whatever combo you may need a couple turns in a row for. Heavy Prayer buff allows the ally with the buff to deal some extra true HP damage, not affected by HP DMG up or FR bonus effects, based on 10% of the ally's HP DMG limit. If you have her BT aura, the buffs granted will be extended by 1 turn, so it will give you a bigger attack window to abuse her turn manipulation utility. Now let's recap on the boss key mechanics. The Zombie Whale has a more dangerous attack rotation. Watch out for its Ultrasonics attack. Other than that, the Zombie Whale will apply a field effect that results your healing skills to do damage instead of recovering HP. The thresholds are 79% to 60% and 39% to 20%. Swap out your HP regen units and bring units that don't have HP regen. Focus on pushing down the HP thresholds so you can heal back up. For this fight, the more dangerous enemy is the Dullahan. It will apply a no brave recovery aura along with a 20% max HP poison aura during the following HP thresholds, 100% to 80%, 59% to 40% and lastly 19% to 0%. As you don't have any brave after you end your turn, it is important to you have means to avoid breaks or prevent breaks. Gladiolus shine here for a cover tank as his blink buff negate brave damage from enemies. You can also dodge all the danger with a party evasion tank like Edge and Leela. Rydia LD buff will grants 3 turns of guaranteed evasion. The boss will switch to counter mode at the 79% and 49% HP thresholds. The 2 counter phases will last between 79% to 60% and 39% to 20%. Upon activating counter phase, the boss will use Absolute Zero, an AoE debuff attack that bypass turn disable effects. The debuff inflicted is a 1-turn framed paralysis and 3-turn ruin debuff. Prevent this with debuff negation call like Reno or Ragin LDCA or dodge the attacks with party-wide evasion. While in counter phase, upon receiving any form of attack, Dullahan will counter with counter ruin holy where it will unleash an AoE brave plus HP attack that will lowers your buff duration by 1 and inflicts 3-turn ruin debuff that will bypass debuff evasion. Focus on killing off the Dullahan first as it is the more problematic foe to handle for this fight. Now I will make a quick overview on the FR of the featured unit, Yuri. Yuri FR is very useful party FR. If not for the meta fan favorite units coming up after his cycle, lots of people will build up Yuri because he is a very strong aura bot if fully geared. His force time will grant party-wide holy enchant when activated. For the first condition, you just need to upkeep HP regen on the party member who acts. There are lots of units that provide HP regen, so I won't be going too deep on which are the units. To fulfill the second and third conditions are that your party just need to deal holy elemental damage. Off-turn damage like counters, traps and follow-up will provide 5% HP damage bonus if they are non-elemental or holy elemental based attacks. Do note that you can't overwrite an existing element with an enchant call. So best companions with Yuri FR are either holy elemental units or non-elemental units. For third condition, Yuri will fulfill it and gains 25% per action as long as he is dealing holy damage. With this, I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight tomorrow. Bye.